it's time for...
The Horror Guys.
Every time I go to say Horror Weekly, he says Horror Guys.
Okay, old habits die hard.
It's Horror Weekly number 295, a.k.a. Horror Guys.
Yeah.
I'm Brian.
It's only a.k.a. now. Yeah. I am a.k.a. Kevin.
He is. Yeah, he is a Kevin K.A. or something.
I am generally known as, yes. So anyway, welcome to episode 295.
That's a lot of horror movies, whatever you want to call it.
That's a lot of them.
Well, this week, we've got 4 brand new films.
Nice.
Not a lot of oldies this week.
And they were...
A mixed bag.
A mixed bag. I'm not going to say they were all good. No.
We've got Maxxxine with 3 X's in the middle, so you know that's going to be just really raunchy and sexy, right?
Triple X.
What was it, PG or something?
It wasn't quite PG, but no, it was R.
Tarot. You read that one, look that one up online, you're going to get a mixed bag.
Yeah, and that has gotten a lot of mixed reviews.
Yes.
A lot of hate, a lot of love, or at least like.
It is a thoroughly mediocre movie.
It was.
It's not terrible.
But it was
It's
okay.
not good.
It was okay. I was entertained.
It's the vanilla pudding of horror movies.
I don't regret seeing it.
Cursed Waters, Creature of Lake Okanagan.
Okanagan.
Yeah.
It's just fun to say Okanagan.
It's more fun to say Ogopogo.
Ogopogo.
We'll get to that later.
Yep.
And the very weird Humanist Vampire Seeking Consenting Suicidal Person.
Yes, that's
which
the
is
title.
going to win the award for longest title this year.
I think so.
Okay, so all those are 2024 movies recently released. And we'll also go back in a few years and watch Insidious Chapter 2 from 2013 as we work toward finishing that series up.
And I'll be so glad when we do.
You don't like that series.
Oh, I'm so weary of that series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't help that we watched them out of order.
Yeah, that makes it worse, I think.
And, of course, we've also got 4 fun shorts this week as well.
They were all good ones.
Yeah. All right. And, hey, guess what? This podcast, as with all the podcasts, all 295 podcasts have been free.
Uh-huh.
Go over to horrorguyspodcast.com, and you can listen to every last one of them, all the way back to episode 1.
How awesome would that be to collect them all?
But, you know, our weekly newsletter, horrorweekly.com, I got to say it right, also has a subscription option where you can pay real money. And if you do that, you get some bonuses.
Goodies.
Prior to today, all you got was access to our full archives. Hundreds of back issues of Horror Weekly, or otherwise known as Horror Bulletin previously. But now, every month, we're going to do, for the paid people, a bonus newsletter. A bonus week of movies. Now, we're not cutting anything away from the free people. Everybody gets a free newsletter. Everybody gets a free podcast every week. But the paid people get an extra one. Yum?
I think that's yummy.
Yeah. What are we going to talk about in the first bonus one, which is coming out next week? So if you're not signed up, now would be a good time.
I have a prediction.
Could it be a prophecy of a...
I prophesize that we will talk about the prophecy movies.
All 5.
5 prophecy movies.
Christopher Walken and other people.
Yeah. Now, previously I had seen the first 2.
I had seen the first 2, and I think the last 2. I'm not so sure about the third one, but I may have actually seen all of them.
Oh, okay. Well, I've seen all of them now.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because the first 3 have a storyline with Christopher Walken that kind of wraps up. And
the first 3 are one coherent story.
And then they decided, hey, let's make a 4th one.
Yeah. A 4th and a 5th. They were simultaneously made.
Yeah. And that has Doug Bradley in one of them.
It does.
And
Tony Todd.
In the other one. Yeah. So
yeah, there's some big names in it.
So they got some big horror names in it. Yeah. And we'll talk about those in the bonus.
I think the first one had the best cast, though. Mm-hmm. But anyway, you can hear about that sometime next week on horrorweekly.com for the paid subscribers alone.
Okay.
If you're not a paid subscriber, sign up. Get the free email in your week. Email in your week. Yes, I go too fast. A free email in your inbox every week with everything we talk about here in text format. And of course, if you save them in your email app, you don't really need that archive. But It sure is nice to be able to just search for them.
Yeah, it is.
All right, well, first up, we have Maxxxine.
Maxxxine.
Or, people always talk about the witch movie, and they call it the Vivitch because they spell it with V's.
Mm-hmm.
This really needed to be called Maxxxine.
There you go, kind of like a stammer.
Yes, so this is 24, Maxxxine, directed and written by Ty West.
This
Stars.
is third in a series.
It is.
Yeah.
Mia Goth, Elizabeth Debicki. How do you say it?
Debicki, I think.
Debicki. Moses Sumney and Michelle Monaghan. Hour and 43 minutes. Trailer in the show notes. And as Kevin said, this was a sequel to X from 2022.
Which was a sequel to Pearl.
Well, Pearl was the sequel. Pearl was a prequel, but it actually came after.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
X in 2022, Pearl in 2023, and Maxxxine in 2024.
And Ty West thinks he's done. But he, I guess, is toying around with the idea of maybe a fourth one.
I think he's beat this one to death.
I thought he did with this.
Well, spoiler-free, what happens?
Well, this continues on with the adventures of Maxxxine, who is now trying to make it big in Hollywood. Mia Goth and the rest of the cast are very good, and the retro look of the film is very fun. It's 80s, and it's cool how they work in the facade of movie sets and movies in progress. And the downside is it's too long and it drags. And it's hard to root for the lead character, who is fundamentally despicable.
We don't like Maxxxine.
Maxxxine is just an awful person.
Yeah. She wasn't a good person in the first movie.
So mixed feelings
or the third
on this
movie.
One. Yeah, she's a murderer. I mean, she's got some good qualities occasionally, but mostly she's just, I don't want to root for her.
We love horror movies. We like rooting for the axe murderer. We like rooting for the devil and the Satanists and the bad guys, but Maxxxine is just fun to root for. She just,
Yeah. She's kind of awful.
Okay, well, this is fairly new, so I'm not going to spoil it to death, but to give you a taste, we begin with old 1959 footage of a girl dancing. Her father's a preacher, and he tells little Maxxxine that she can be whatever she wants to be. And we saw some of that at the end of the previous movie, didn't we?
We did, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Well, we then cut to adult Maxxxine, who is doing an audition for a movie. She's nearly 33, and she knows she's starting to get too old to keep doing porn, because she was a porn star in the first movie.
Mm-hmm.
Now she wants to be in real movies. And she does a dramatic scene, and the casting people are impressed, but they still want to see her boobs, because it's Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
She does this whole dramatic, tearful thing, and they're like, oh, that was really good.
Okay, now take your top off.
Yeah. Credits roll as we see 1985 news stories to tell us when this takes place. And we're reminded just how weird the 80s really were. And there's a serial killer called the Night Stalker that is mentioned repeatedly in those news clippings. The Night Stalker was a real person, so they're setting this about that time.
They work in real stuff, yeah.
After the audition, Maxxxine walks to a porn studio, snorts some coke, and gets ready for a different kind of acting job.
Yeah, she's still doing porn.
Yeah.
What?
Her agent calls and says she didn't get that good part, but she has been cast in a new horror film. Well, that's almost as good.
Yeah.
Because, no big stars get their start in horror, says Mia Goth.
Uh-huh.
We cut to a peep show where a man in black leather and a hat watches a woman undress. Later, Maxxxine gets caught in a dead-end alley with a man carrying a knife. She pulls her gun and makes him strip naked. Then she does something rather excessive to him.
Oh, and that's painful.
Oh, yeah,
that's
it is.
painful
That
to
looks
watch
bad.
What she does to him, yeah.
Later, Maxxxine gets a videotape delivered anonymously. And it's a police evidence tape of her doing bad things in those previous movies.
Yeah, she's not going by Maxxxine here. She's assumed a false identity and kind of left her old life behind.
Yeah.
Well, her old life is catching up with her.
And so is the blackmailer.
Mm-hmm.
Maxxxine then goes to a special effects place and has a full head cast made. It's part of that horror movie thing. While she's waiting for it to dry, she has flashbacks to old Pearl in the second movie. Or maybe it was the first movie. It was the first movie,
Stuff
yeah.
that happened previously, yeah.
And then detectives are called to a crime scene where 2 more bodies have been found. It's that Night Stalker person, or maybe a copycat.
Or is it? Yeah.
Well, Maxxxine gets a cryptic note with a phone number, and the man on the line demands that he meet her. John Labatt introduces himself. He's a private detective hired to find her. This is Kevin Bacon, and he is way over the top. Yeah, he's a good role there.
He's fun.
I think he's the best part of the movie. Well, he brings up the names of several dead people from the first film, and he also hands her an invitation to that party. She's being blackmailed, or at least it looks like it.
Mm-hmm, it does.
But when she goes home, the two detectives catch up and ask her about Amber and Tabby, two of her colleagues that were murdered, maybe by the Night Stalker.
That's those bodies in the park.
And we'll stop there because you haven't seen it yet, probably.
Yeah. And you probably should if you've seen the other two.
If you've seen the first two and liked them, you should go for the third one. If you didn't much care for the first two, you aren't going to like this one either.
Yeah. It's yeah.
Well, we watched X and Pearl when they came out, and we mostly liked both of them. I liked Pearl best of the three.
I did too, yeah.
All three of the movies try to do something very different, and this one tackles life in 1980s Hollywood and ties it in with a satanic panic. She's doing this horror movie, and there's always picketers outside about Satan and everything else. Because horror movies are evil.
Yes, they are.
It was very well made, especially the retro aspects of it. It looked like an 80s film, and the setting was really good. Problem is, in my opinion, I never liked Maxxxine as a character, not in the first film and not here either.
I agree.
Without caring about the characters, the film, I thought, was dreadfully dull.
It didn't help.
And then it drags out with 2 or 3 different places where it could have ended, but then dragged on. You remember Lord of the Rings where it ended like 6 times? Yeah, just like that.
I actually have a comment on that in,
okay.
in mine. Yeah.
Well,
not Lord of the Rings, but yeah.
What is your comments?
Well, I love Mia Goth. I think she's very skilled in the role. But like Brian said, it's hard to care about the anti-hero Maxxxine. And it was funny because at one point we paused, needed a break, and I looked at the timer and I actually said, how can there be another half hour left?
There was, and he did.
And there was. Like, what? Shouldn't this be like 5? I thought it was like 5 minutes to go. Saying, no. It's on the long side, and I thought it felt that way. It's really well made, but it's too long, and I thought it was on the dull side through a lot of it.
Yeah. Again, if you really liked the first two, go for it. If you're sort of meh about the first couple, you aren't going to like this one even less.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I thought X was a perfectly fine slasher movie. It was okay. Pearl, I kind of liked. Yeah.
I think I agree with you, though. I liked Pearl the best of the 3.
And this one was certainly the weakest of the 3.
That had her growing up and fantasizing about
being a star.
Being a star. And then she was fixated on the Wizard of Oz and various things. And it was cool.
Okay, so it was okay.
It was okay.
Also could be said okay as Tarot from 2024. Directed by Spencer Cohen and Anna Hallberg. Written by those two along with Nicholas Adams. Stars Harriet Slater, Adane Bradley, and Jacob Batalon. I don't recognize any of those names, do you?
No, I don't.
Hour and 32 minutes. Trailer in the show notes. Spoiler free, there's not a lot new here, but it's a well-made movie. And the card designs are pretty cool.
Yeah, they are.
The cast is okay. The effects are good, although it's a little too heavy on CGI. And it does tell a story. Well, that's high praise. It tells a story.
Well, it does. It's not something that movies always do.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Who, if anyone, will survive the cards and how? You're going to have to watch to find out. We give it a moderate thumbs up.
Yeah.
As I said, it's well made. It looks good. The acting is all right. The story is there. It's just, how many times have we seen this sort of thing?
Yeah.
Some teenagers go to a party and do something bad, and then they die one by one, except for a couple people at the end who don't.
With unusual deaths. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. A couple paragraphs of the spoilery synopsis.
A group of friends have rented a mansion, but they're having a campfire out back. It's Elisa's birthday. During the game, it comes up that Haley and Grant have broken up. She thinks he's not ambitious enough. He thinks he's too ambitious. Well, the real horror sets in. They've finished their last beer. They're out of alcohol. And there's a bit of a panic about that. So they go in searching for booze in this house they've rented. They find a padlocked cellar and think, there's some booze down there. They go exploring, except they don't find booze.
Yeah, so throughout all this discussion and back and forth, we find out who these characters are. There's, I don't know, maybe 6 of them, and they're generic teenagers.
And there's a little drama, and yeah. Well, the room they discover has a bunch of magic shop gadgets and old things and mystical-looking stuff. Paxton finds a box of tarot cards, and Haley says she can tell everyone's future with them. She says it looks like these cards were hand-painted.
Don't do it.
Well, Haley does. She makes readings for Elise, Madeline, Paige, Paxton, and Lucas.
Yep, there's 6 of them.
And gives them all advice that will probably come in handy later.
Word for word, her advice that she just sort of makes up is always useful.
Yeah. Only Grant abstains from the readings, but he eventually relents and he gets one as well. He thinks she's making it up for him to get him for the breakup. Well, later we see the box of tarot cards glow and credits roll. In the morning, the whole group gets in their cars and goes back to campus. They're not high schoolers, they're college age. Paxton makes them listen to a podcast for the 4-hour drive.
And of course, the joke there is that podcasters are so annoying. Yes.
Well, they stop for gas, and Lucas wins $700 on a lottery ticket, which was predicted by the cards.
No, that's good.
You're going to come into money, yeah. Well, Elise goes home, finds a ladder up to the attic. Haley had mentioned something about the ladder of success in her reading, so she climbs the ladder. But it's not success that she finds.
That's a good place to stop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And bad things happen to them based on what their fortunes were.
And what the advice was.
Yeah, and the cards are cursed, of course. And,
And while the concept is very obvious from the title alone, we knew, but we didn't see any trailers. We went into this blind, and we still could have told you step by step what was going to happen.
They're going to find a tarot deck, and they're going to do readings. Yeah.
The cards predict bad things about all the characters, and they die horrible deaths. This one not only adds strange deaths, but the actual characters on the card comes to life, which is a fun touch. Mm-hmm. What did you say, the witch or something? Up in the attic?
High Priestess.
The High Priestess is on the card, painted on the card, and that High Priestess is actually up there in that attic.
And there's like the Jester,
the Hangman, and stuff,
yeah, various ones.
On the other hand, a lot of stuff happens in the dark that we can just barely see.
Yes, not the Jester.
We've got a brand new TV, high, super high, everything, and we know how to tune it, and it's just still in the dark. Mm-hmm. It's listed as a horror comedy. But other than a very few laughs in the first 5 minutes, the beer jokes, the comedy goes away very quickly. I don't remember anything funny in the last hour and a half.
It's pretty grim and serious.
There's a lot of CGI here. It's not terrible, but it's overused. I think all those characters that I said were cool were all CGI. None of the characters have any real story other than Haley, and she's going to be the final girl, and some are downright annoying. It's all very predictable and even a little cliched in most aspects. But for what it is well made and doesn't get boring. If you like that kind of, something supernatural's killing off the teenagers, give it a shot. I was bored with it. Not as bored as with Maxxxine, but it was, okay, the big complaint here is how predictable it was.
Yeah.
There are no surprises here.
And the lesson I'm getting from movies like this is don't play around with antique games, no matter how cool the design is. If you find it in a basement, or, stashed away, just leave it. Don't play with it.
Even games like hide and seek.
Yeah.
Don't play games. Games are bad.
In trivia, I was reading about it, says they did create the deck used for this movie.
Okay.
Yeah. But like you said, they find the deck fairly quickly, and, we know. I found myself looking at the gang and thought, who's going to survive and who's going to get killed off? And, so it is that kind of movie. Yeah.
All right, so surprisingly enough, my favorite of the week, Humanist Vampire Seeking Consenting Suicidal Person, 2024. Directed by Ariane Louises, written by Christine Doyen and Ariane Louises, stars Sarah Monpetit, Félix Antoine Bernard, and Steve LaPlante. Hour and 30 minutes, and it is very, very French,
very
with
French.
Subtitles.
It's a French movie with subtitles. Occasionally they break into a little Spanish. I noticed the one guy I think is a Spaniard, and
you see,
and she chews him out for we stop speaking Spanish. He's bilingual; he does know French, but yeah.
Well, I'll bet most people haven't seen this one, so spoil free.
It's a dark comedy at its core, and there are some funny bits, but it's pretty grim to be considered a comedy. It's a good horror movie, though. It's got a unique take on the vampire mythos. We find out right from the beginning that there's a whole secret vampire subculture with families and scientists and doctors, and we thought it was great.
Yeah, one scene they go to the vampire dentist.
Yeah, and the vampire psychologist.
Yeah. And that's not spoilers. That's like 3 minutes in.
Yeah. And it's a family. It's a
Vampire family,
Parents with the daughter, and there's a cousin and an aunt, and clearly others out there too. Kind of.
It's a coming of age romance,
angsty,
outcast kind of movie.
Yeah,
angsty. Yeah,
very angsty.
All right, well, you can get most of this just from reading the blurb on the movie, but it's Sasha's birthday, and her parents and cousin Denise get her a keyboard that she already knows how to play.
So it's like she's a savant.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe they can all do that. I don't know.
No, they seemed very surprised because Dad started handing her a beginner's book. Here, honey, you'll need this
as she plays in tune.
As she's playing. Okay.
She's never touched a piano before, but she knows it. Rico the clown shows up. Somebody ordered a clown for her birthday, and only Sasha seems pleased. He's not particularly funny, but he can do magic tricks.
He's kind of an awful clown.
Turns out the whole family are vampires, and they eat Rico. Sasha's fangs haven't come in yet, and she gets upset at the carnage instead of wanting to join in the feeding like she should. So her family eats the clown, and she gets traumatized by it.
Yeah, they're concerned. So they take her to the doctor and the dentist, and why haven't her fangs come in? And the psychiatrist, does all these tests.
Turns out she's traumatized by watching vampire movies. The doctor thinks it may be a brain defect. She's just too compassionate.
Yeah, instead of the feeding instinct being triggered when she sees humans dying, she starts feeling sorry for them. That's not how it's supposed to work.
Her father is sure that she'll grow into it eventually, but her mother insists, I won't be hunting for all of us for the next 200 years. And then credits roll. That's just the beginning.
And that's some of the humor there, the family.
Yeah. I'm not feeding all of you for that long.
Yeah. And the dad's like, well, I hunted. And she's like, when? Oh, Monday? Yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to just leave that there. You get the idea where it's going to be, because this is a good one to go into blind. If you like vampires and you like comedy, it's a good one.
And little Sasha, some years pass, and she's a teenager.
And her fangs still have not come in yet.
Yeah, and she's still all angst-filled, and they're providing blood for her. The family is. And, things happen from there.
Yeah. Okay, well, first of all, my comment here is clowns are enough to give anybody PTSD, whether you eat them or not.
Yeah.
Indigestion is always a risk, but yeah.
They taste funny.
Do suicidal people have groups like Alcoholics Anonymous where you're sitting around in a circle and talk?
Maybe they do in France.
It seems counterproductive, like they'd all get together and do it as a group or something.
The group seemed a little strange.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, obviously in this case it really was strange, but I mean, just that exists, it doesn't seem like a thing.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, it's described as a dark comedy, but other than just the basic situation that we've explained, it's not really got that much humor to it other than the basic premise.
It's here and there, but mostly it's pretty serious.
There are some funny bits, but they're kind of few and far between. Still, it's very well done, and we were entertained throughout.
Very much so.
We were talking about this for a couple of days afterwards.
I'm glad we went into it blind.
Yeah.
Cast is great, and the effects are perfect, and the story is really entertaining.
The one drawback is it's subtitled, but it wouldn't surprise me a bit if 3 or 4 years we didn't see a remake in English.
Yeah, it's that good.
Yeah.
I could see somebody latched onto it for that.
Okay, right now, my favorite of the week.
Yep, me too.
You too, okay.
Yeah.
And, oh boy, Insidious Chapter 2, 2013.
Directed by James Wan. Written by Lee Wannell and James Wan. And he's one of the guys from Saw, the original Saw.
Yeah?
Yeah. Stars Patrick Wilson, Rose Byrne, and Barbara Hershey. Runtime's an hour and 46 minutes. Trailer in the show notes.
Spoiler free. Who reads this one, you or me?
I'll do the spoiler
Okay.
free. This is more of the same. After things didn't get as wrapped up as they appeared in the first movie. And so the writers found a way to continue the troubles. It's not a favored franchise by either of the horror guys, but it's well made. The cast is good. The effects are good. If you enjoyed the first one, you're likely to enjoy this one. It's really more of the same. And I mean, it's kind of clever how they do manage to, because it really did seem like things were wrapped up pretty good.
And that's why they should have left it alone. It was good. The first one was fine.
But they do, bring it back, and okay, yeah, I can see that kind of makes sense. Very much the same level as far as quality, I thought.
Yeah.
The first one, second one, it's a solid sequel.
So far, we've seen the first one. Now we've seen the second one. We've seen the fourth one, The Red Door.
The Red Door.
We have not seen the third one yet.
Years later, yeah.
You think they're going to do exactly the same thing on the third one?
I bet they will.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
It's like Paranormal Activity. It's the same thing over and over and over.
Kinda.
People keep paying to see it.
Yeah.
Well, it's 1986 at the Lambert house. Elise arrives and talks to Lorraine. Carl called her because he doesn't know how to proceed. Young Josh is being followed by something supernatural. There are photos of bad things happening just behind Josh. Elise hypnotizes Josh and asks many questions. She walks through the house looking for the demon, and it cuts her arm. Elise says she can use hypnosis to make Josh forget his powers. Credits roll. Okay, so that's a little bit of a sort of a prequel-y kind of thing.
Yeah, it fills you in on what happened before.
Then we flash to sometime just right after the first film. Lorraine talks to the detective about the deaths. Old Elise has died. She's laying right there in a chair with her mouth hanging open. Mm-hmm. And the detective wants to know why. She tells him about little Dalton being in a coma and how Josh went into the dream world to get him back. Elise made all that happen, but she didn't survive. Yeah, this is the first movie. We've seen that much.
Yeah.
We get flashbacks, and the detective thinks Josh killed the old woman. There's no evidence, though.
It's funny how the police don't believe all this supernatural stuff. And
I don't know why they wouldn't believe it.
That it has a logical explanation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As the police investigate, Josh and the family stay at Grandma Lorraine's house. After the kids go to bed, Renee hears the piano playing by itself. It's clear to everyone that their problems aren't over. Lorraine sees a woman in white wandering around the house. Elsewhere, Tucker and Specs, two guys in the first movie, talk about Elise's death. They find videotapes from the 1986 incident in her basement. Adult Josh shows up behind the younger version of himself in the video. So this film was taken in 1986, and you're seeing like 12-year-old Josh there, and then the 30-year-old version behind him, who is time traveling or something.
Phasing out in astral projection.
Yeah.
Kind of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey kind of thing. Which I thought was a little clever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the morning, Dalton tells Renee about seeing dead people last night. Josh is acting weird, completely in denial that anything unusual is happening. Lorraine calls Tucker and Specs and tells them that they're not done yet. Come back here, I need a refund. Renee sees the woman in white too, and then the baby goes missing. Specs and Tucker call in Carl, who remembers that time from 1986. He uses word dice to contact Elise, like a Ouija board, only he uses dice. Who killed you? She did. This leads them to an old hospital where Lorraine used to work way back in the day. She talks about her experiences with a weird old man there who attacked Josh when he was little. Then the old man killed himself right afterwards. Josh is hearing voices that tell him to kill. He tells Renee to ignore the ghosts and they'll go away.
If you ignore them, they won't hurt you? Is that how that works?
Not in movies.
Huh.
Lorraine and the guys go to the old dead man's house, which is boarded up and abandoned. Carl senses many bad things in the house. They see several ghosts, including the Mother of Death. They find a secret room that is full of rows and rows and rows of bodies.
Ew.
Uh-huh. The old man who died turns out to be a serial killer who dressed like an old woman. And he was called the Bride in Black.
Okay.
Lorraine talks to Renee and says the problem isn't the house or the kids, it's Josh. When he went to the other world, it wasn't him who came back. Carl and the ghost guys bring a tranquilizer shot to knock out Josh. Carl asks questions about his experiences, and it's clear that Josh is not himself. Specs and Tucker run inside to help, but Josh knocks them all out. Carl then wakes up in The Further, and Josh is in there.
Real Josh.
Yeah, he says that the thing must have killed Carl. They go looking for Elise in the afterlife, but instead Josh gets a vision of what's been happening at home. There's a baby-eating demon in there, but Elise shows up and drives it away. Elise says Josh needs to use the bride's memory to drive her away. Well, we once again flash back to 1986, where modern Josh visits the child version of himself. Adult Josh doesn't remember any of the details of the old woman, but the young one still does. Young Josh shows old Josh, Carl, and Elise to a red door in the basement.
That red door will come in handy later.
Meanwhile, in the real world, Lorraine and Renee encounter evil Josh, who isn't looking good. In the middle of the resulting fight, Dalton and Foster come home from their friend's house, and we get a flashback to Parker Crane / the bride being brainwashed by his own mother to go by the name Marilyn.
Yeah, it started when he was a kid. His mother wanted a little girl.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's much fighting and ghostly chasing around. Elise tells Josh and Carl that it's time to live again, but they have to go now. Dalton shows up in the further to lead them out. Josh and Dalton wake up, but Josh says it's really him now. Renee isn't convinced right away, and he says that it was him playing the piano because he couldn't get back on his own. It's all over, so Carl hypnotizes both Josh and Dalton to forget the whole thing, especially how they know how to travel to the afterlife. Elise's ghost still hangs around with Tucker and Specs, helping people. She's like Slimer in the Ghostbusters, I guess.
Yeah, I think so.
She sees something scary, but we
ghost.
don't see what it is.
Who you going to call? Ghostbusters.
Elise, Specker, and Tux.
That's the crossover we need.
Yeah.
Ghostbusters meets Insidious.
Oh, it would be over so fast. Well, the first film went to great lengths to make it clear that it was not a haunted house film, but this one actually visits several haunted houses.
Yes, it is a haunted house film.
It looks good, and it's well acted, but there's just too much of it. It should have been a half an hour shorter.
Yeah, that was what I was thinking.
It's not my favorite franchise, but if you like the first one, you'll probably want to see this one as well. I think there's just too much Patrick Wilson in horror right now. He's mediocre at best, and he's in everything.
He's in too many of these.
Conjuring.
There's too many of these.
And I don't even know what else.
And the trouble is that these and The Conjuring tend to run together in my memory too.
It's the same director, same actors,
and it's Patrick Wilson showing up and doing stuff.
Yeah.
The characters aren't distinct enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Look, it's Patrick Wilson. What's he playing? Oh, it's playing Patrick Wilson.
He's playing that guy again. Yeah, a bit too long. Yeah. If you like the others, check it out, but it's not our cup of tea.
Nah.
Yeah.
All right. Nobody's cup of tea is
Nobody?
cryptids.
No.
Nobody wants to meet a cryptid.
Well, those who have stories to tell.
They do.
And
they show up on interview shows all the time.
Some of them tell their stories here.
Such as the new documentary, Cursed Waters, Creature of Lake Okanagan, 2024. Directed by Eli Watson. Stars Jason Hewlett, John Kirk, and Carol Lee Miller, and a whole bunch of other people. Hour and 17 minutes. Trailer in the show notes. And I don't know, it seems like every 3 or 4 months we get one of these documentaries about cryptids, and they're...
The small town monsters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're all good.
They do good work, yeah.
I don't know that I'm convinced about any of them yet, but the movies are good.
We remain skeptical, but yeah, they're interesting.
Spoiler free, it was another well put together documentary exploration piece about a cryptid that may or may not exist. There is a little actual footage, real films.
Distant, splashy things in the water.
Yeah. Mixed with speculation footage, along with eyewitnesses, experts, and indigenous folks who offer their takes and theories on the creature. And this was especially interesting to us because we'd never heard of this lake or creature before.
No?
I've heard of Ogopogo before.
Oh, you had?
If you'd asked me where he lived, I couldn't have told you what lake or anything, but I know I've heard of it.
Okanagan.
Yeah, Okanagan, I don't know.
Yeah.
They say it 18 times in the movie.
I
learned to say Ogopogo. That's as far as I'm going.
Okay.
All right, well, it's a documentary, so we may as well talk about it.
There's not really spoilers.
Yeah.
We open on a history lesson about the American settlers and how they took what they wanted, how they wanted, without respecting nature. One man in particular, John McDougall, crossed the lake with some horses, and something started eating the horses.
One horse sinks. Yeah. Then another horse sinks. Then the third horse sinks.
And he had to cut them loose quick.
Yeah,
because it was starting to pull the boat down. Yeah. Well, in the 1850s, the story eventually becomes a myth, but the lake is now a heavily populated area.
Very heavily populated. It's a big city there.
It's and they show the extent of the buildings and stuff on the shore.
There's like two big cities on the opposite side of the lake with a bridge
Beautiful
connecting
area,
them.
beautiful lake, and it's heavily used by boats for recreation and fishing.
Yeah, Loch Ness. You say it's in the mountains and there's forest everywhere, and you could see something living in there. This is a very populated lake.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, go on.
Well, it's in Canada, a reasonably big tourist area. There are some stories of Ogopogo, the monster of the lake. And we meet the three filmmakers who are investigating the creature. There are two major cities, one on each side of the lake, connected by a bridge. And it's thought that Ogopogo is not a dinosaur like Nessie. It's more of a snake-like Chinese dragon-style creature with big horns.
Instead of a big body and a little neck, it's more
snaky.
Yeah, more snaky.
Yeah. The first videos of the beast were taken in 1964 by a man with a handheld camera, and we see that footage. But for the most part, Ogopogo is looked upon as harmless, and at least not aggressive. Ferries in 1926 were armed, just in case, but it never attacked anyone. In 1872, there's an account of Susan Allison, who watched her husband in a boat on the side of the lake, and she saw it out on the waves. It said she was the first European to see the creature.
Yeah, there's a whole long history of who saw it first.
Mm-hmm. One native woman explains Ogopogo is a dimension walker, a water spirit, not a regular monster. And it's used as a tourist attraction now.
There are toys.
Yep, and stores, and you can get a stuffed Ogopogo. Yeah, it's heavily commercialized, and she doesn't think that's very respectful of nature and this creature. And if you saw something you couldn't explain in the water, would you tell the media? 92% wouldn't do it.
Very specific.
That's a very specific number. Yeah. Many describe what they saw and how the creature behaves with all the motorboat activity. We watched several blurry film camera recordings of the monster from years ago. There is some discussion about the lakes of Canada being connected with underwater passages, and there is some geological facts to that. And they think that the sea monsters are traveling from lake to lake through these tunnels, perhaps. Many lakes are said to have monsters.
We saw something about Loch Ness Monster not too long ago that talked about traveling from lake to lake in caves and maybe even magical portals.
That one got way out, with magical portals, because it's like a bunch of quartz in the rocks, and that sets up a resonance that
That wasn't one of these small town movies. That was something else.
That was a different one.
Yeah.
But they got really way out with the theories on Loch Ness.
Well, let's stick with this one for now.
Yeah.
As with the previous Small Town Monsters productions, this one has excellent production values. It looks good, and it's highly polished. The drum soundtrack, I thought, they had like these steel drums in the beginning,
Well, I think it was indigenous people drum. I think it was the indigenous woman, when they were out on the water, she was pounding on a drum.
Okay.
I think it was that kind of drums, not steel drums.
Well, this was early in the beginning before they introduced her.
Yeah, it was.
The
it's
drum,
a little bit overpowering.
Yeah, it was. It was a little bit louder than it should have been.
Yeah.
But we got through it. It didn't go through the whole movie.
Mm-hmm.
The filmmakers speak to various experts and locals about Ogopogo, and they're all interesting. It's a very scenic place, and it looks like everyone had a good time making the film. They all went out on the boat and toured the area.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't mind making that movie.
Yeah, very nice.
People love their cryptids. I'm still not quite convinced, though.
Yeah. This organization does good work, and this is another well-put-together one. Like we talked about, though, I'm especially skeptical about this one with the population around there, because everybody has a phone in their pocket now. Shouldn't there be a lot more modern footage of sightings?
Oh, stop.
Yeah, it's a beautiful area that draws many, many people. But anyway, it was good. It's worth checking out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which takes us to our short films of the week, and this time there are 4 of them.
Okay.
What is The Coldest Caller?
The Coldest Caller? That was only 3 minutes and 53 seconds.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Directed by Joe Tucker, stars Sheila Reed, Noel Byrne, and Harry Page. Link in the show notes to watch it on YouTube.
I would say this was my favorite of the week.
Oh, it's not my favorite. I liked it, but it's not my favorite of the week.
Okay.
What happens?
Well, Death has a list and an appointment with Mrs. Evan, an old lady who lives alone. She, however, is happy to see Death, as she needs her plumbing repaired.
I'm so glad you're here. Here's a wrench.
Yeah. And Death is just kind of going along with it and trying to do the repair. Well, sometimes an encounter with Death doesn't go as planned. And someone's going to have a really bad day. I liked how it was so super short, but so well done.
Yeah, most of the ones that are like under 4 minutes is usually just a very brief scene or something. But you get everything you need here.
You do, yeah. The old woman is... she's right where she needs to be. Yeah. And the guy who plays Death doesn't say anything, but he really carries it with all his manners.
He's very funny and never says a word.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, very, very good. Definitely recommend it.
For sure.
We then go to Animus, 2024, directed by Raj Kalichurn, written by him also. Stars Anand Thakuri, Sophie DeGrace. 6 minutes, 5 seconds. YouTube as always. Harry wakes up to the sound of an old record playing in the next room. He looks kind of unwell, to say the least. He's wearing a CPAP machine, but his face is covered in dust? Flakes? I don't know. I thought maybe he was dead and on life support or something.
No, I don't think so. Just a CPAP.
Well, he goes into the next room and finds someone sitting in the rocking chair. No, there's no one actually there. Or maybe there is. Either way, Harry unleashes his murderous rage on the person. And this kind of thing never ends well.
Very seldom.
Oh, it's very surreal and weird. I couldn't understand quite why Harry was so sickly looking as he sleeps. Is he possibly already dead? Maybe. Who is the woman in the chair? I have many questions. It does look good, has some interesting special effects, and doesn't overstay its welcome. It's pretty nice, but I still have questions.
It was pretty good, though.
Yeah. I don't quite know what it was about, but it was well done. Next film, short one called Paranoia, Para/Noia, 2024, directed by Isaac Ruth, written by Isaac Ruth, stars, oh, look, it's Isaac Ruth.
This was kind of a one-woman show.
One-man show, but 4 minutes. Trailer in the show notes. And just like the other one, this is a whole story, too.
Yeah, it is a guy, isn't it? I
Yeah.
misspoke.
Ruth. You're thinking Ruth.
It's a one-man show. Yeah.
Isaac Ruth. Our main character looks at his phone, debating whether or not to buy a book to help with his agoraphobia. He clicks the button, and suddenly there's a knock at the door, and then the doorbell, then tapping. Finally, he finds a note that tells him, "Don't open the door." Of course, he does eventually open the door.
And things happen.
Yeah. This is why I always buy the ebook version. There's no demonic entities that way.
You get fewer of them. Nobody knocking at the door delivering the book.
There's no dialogue, just that guy moving around his apartment, but the lighting, the sound, and a few low-key special effects make the story work. It's all about fear, and it does a good job getting that across. It's really very good.
It is, yeah.
Next up, my favorite of the week,
Okay.
Shiny New World, 2021. Written and directed by Jan van Gorkum, stars Patrick Stoof, Gilles Scholten van Aschat, and Martin Prins. It sounds very Northern Europe, doesn't it?
As you may guess by those names. Yeah, it's not an American film.
8 minutes, and it's on YouTube. What happens?
Well, it's a corporate training video describing what you should expect on your first day at the job. Well, this job and the coworkers are very unusual, as they operate a very special kind of cleaning service. We focus on Barry, an experienced cleaner, who is going to walk us through one of his typical days.
And the narrator talks, and you can tell from the sound that he's just like one of those, welcome to our new job, your new job. Here's how your day is going to go.
Now, imagine the movies like Tarot, for example, where a group of people get into something and, summon something.
What happens
And there's bodies
afterward?
Everywhere. Well, somebody's got to come and clean that up and clean up the magic and clean up the corpses and stuff.
And this is your new job.
And that's
Welcome aboard.
That's what their job is.
All right. Well, this one is really something. The prosthetics and creature makeup are extremely well done. The narration, timing, and visuals are excellent. And the narration's in, Finnish or Norwegian or something, but just the tone of the guy's voice is just perfect.
It is, yeah.
And of course, it's all tongue-in-cheek and hilarious as a training video. Absolutely, I would watch a whole feature-length film of this.
Oh, that would be great as a full-length movie.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
We've seen dumber things.
Yeah, it would. This, I'd say is a close second for my favorite of the week.
Definitely full-level movie production values. It's very good looking.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
I was surprised that they got those prosthetics and creatures from just a little short. Mm-hmm. It's really well done.
Yeah, it was.
All right, well, that's it for this week. Stop in over at horrorweekly.com. Sign up for the free weekly newsletter. Go to horrorguys.com, where you can find all these shorts every week. And, of course, at the end of the month, check out Horror Monthly, where you can buy the book with all the reviews in it.
All right.
Yeah, you're not going to miss a thing with Horror Weekly or horrormonthly.com. I'm Brian.
And I'm Kevin.
And we'll see you next week.
See ya.